Okay. Okay, welcome to Group D's presentation for our final presentation for ABUS 3301. We will be analyzing the supply chain management strategies for CooleyCap Incorporated. CooleyCap Incorporated is a nonprofit organization located in western Wisconsin that serves 4 counties. It was formed about 50 years ago during the War on Poverty, and serves roughly 30,000 30,000 individuals a year, roughly about 10,000 families. It has a budget of about $8 million. That number in the recent history has expanded as high as $12 million based on the Recovery Act and other acts and funding measures that have passed through Congress. And that fact will become important later when we discuss some of its challenges with managing its supply chain. Its primary products or services is housing assistance, real estate development, income development, job and business development, transportation, really anything that can benefit low-income households moving towards self-sufficiency. Its customers are really broken into 2 categories. One is low-income persons who actually consume the services. The other are the individuals who pay for those services, which tend to be the government, both state, federal, as well as local, foundations, and private donors. CooleyCap has has a lot of suppliers, but this presentation focuses primarily on the suppliers that work in its housing rehab and weatherization programs. There's 23 different construction contractors who fix houses for CooleyCap, 3 different heating and air conditioning vendors, and 5 different building supply companies that provide supplies. So it's a pretty diverse supplier mix. The company doesn't have owners in the traditional sense. It has a 24-member board of directors with 6 members of the board coming from each county. It's headquartered in Westby, Wisconsin, which is a very rural town of about 5,000 people, with field offices in La Crosse, Westby, Sparta, and Prairie du Chien. Each of these is located about 30 miles from Westby. All of them are located in very small communities, with the exception of La Crosse, which is a city of about 50,000, which is still actually quite small. This is the list of who's going to be presenting during the analysis, and so we're going to start with Yun on process management and scorecards. Oh, sorry,
Oh, I got it.
Yeah, with David. My bad.
All right. So some of the strategic processes that CooleyCap has. First of all, they don't follow a specific process or system. What they do is they have a 5-year plan that outlines the agency near-term goals. Implementation of the plan is the responsibility of the management team members, and the goals get broken down into objectives. And each of the objectives is assigned to a specific person with a start and end date. Each of the goals is also assigned to a sponsor if the person is not a management team member. And some of the key aspects that help ensure quality are one is a weatherization program, which has internal metrics that track products at the performance against the performance level stated by the manufacturer. It works inside the homes and it increases the energy efficiency. Products used must perform at or better than the manufacturer's specifications. The agency's real estate development operations uses performance, durability, and Origin Green as some other key aspects. They must also perform at or above the manufacturer's specifications, but they also must meet the environmental standards relevant to the type of products, such as green label, carpeting. And to the next slide, some ways that CooleyCap can help leaders become better leaders are through their resources. One is career development. Staff who wish to advance their leadership skills can request funding from the agency corporate reserves. Also, supervisory training. The agency operates an annual 8-part education program for leaders. And then finally is the fund granted training. And the agency builds training dollars into each grant it receives, and training dollars can be used for leadership development.
So for process management and scorecard, CooleyCap currently doesn't use any balanced scorecards, but this is being considered by the board of directors. And with end-to-end process management, it's important to consider and monitor the suppliers as well as look at the feedback from the customers about the final product. And some of the ways that they do this is internal testing, and they have an auditing staff, and they also do random testing of their suppliers as well as on-site inspections. And they also look at the client surveys as feedback from their customers. And their current challenge is with the inconsistency in production volume. And because of this, they're unable to provide constant stream of business to suppliers. And so after a large volume of production, the quality tends to suffer. And their current solution to this is to offer low-cost financing to vendors when production volume is low. But with this, the outcome tends to have mixed results. And this is also difficult for nonprofit firms to carry out. And the takeaway from this is that their approach is impacted by their rural location and the lack of capital to invest in systems and change management training. And because the supply chain is small, it's hard to implement Six Sigma into their suppliers.
Moving on to the voice of the customer. As Todd mentioned in the beginning slides, there are two types of customers that utilize CooleyCap or incorporated the business. First off, there are the clients, which are the 30,000 or so individuals in regional Wisconsin looking to receive services from CooleyCap Incorporated. And then on the other side of the spectrum are the customers, which are considered the funder customers, and those consist of the agencies, foundations, donors, etc., who pay for the services received by the clients. And then more specifically, when considering the funder customer service guidelines, there's several protocols in place in order to ensure strong relationships with these customers. For instance, they return phone calls and emails within a 24-hour timeline. There's vice president level contacts from CooleyCap to the funder customers. Primary contact is assigned to each funder customer in order to have some stabilization in terms of building that relationship with the funder customer and having a main lead with those specific business in particular. And then, so using the voice of the customer within CooleyCap Incorporated, among the clients, there's a 3-year regular assessment of the general needs and requirements among the low-income clientele in the area in order to get a general grasp of what the personnel in the region would like to are requiring at any given point in time. And then there's also the use of focus groups and interviews with local elected officials in order to determine what their regions and what their communities are in greater need for at that time. And then in terms of the funder customers, annual surveys are put out to determine and focus on how CooleyCap Incorporated can change its business operations in order to gain a better positive experience from the funder customers. And then the whole marketing incentive is based on strong relationship building and overall results from successful businesses.
All right, so we're going to move along because we only have about 6 minutes left. CooleyCap does not have a formalized Six Sigma or process improvement process that they use. They have something called target improvement process. It's sort of like a poor man's Six Sigma in essence. Where it mostly struggles is the DMAIC phase, or the measure phase of DMAIC, in that it has a hard time measuring the cost of the problem. So an example being they don't track the cost of weatherization reworks, either in the individual or overall. They also, for example, couldn't quantify how much it costs to do timesheets across the agency, and that's no small feat when using grant money. So another challenge is that even sometimes when they use their target improvement process, the results that are found can't be implemented because they're restricted by low bid requirements, or federal bidding rules, procurement rules. And then as far as in pushing it down to the supply chain, it's very difficult. It's a very limited service area, a very rural service area, and many of the providers are simple one or two man contractors who really don't have the capacity to do Six Sigma, who don't understand Six Sigma, who frankly never heard of Six Sigma. And so all of those stack up to be it's very challenging to push Six Sigma through the organization or even something like it because they lack the funding, the resources, and the education.
So at CooleyCap, there is a process that's followed when determining which projects to complete. The management team first meets every 6 months to decide which projects need to be done, and then those projects are voted on, and whichever projects receive the highest amount of votes are then prioritized for review. Finally, the problem is closely analyzed to determine the cost of the faulty process and the potential change in cost or extra revenue that will be acquired from fixing it. When deciding which projects have higher priority over others, the company looks at a version of residual income for interdepartmental projects, and for agency projects, they look at residual income and strategic plan advancement. Their projects are geared towards satisfying customer needs by focusing on streamlining administrative work and reducing non-value add time. The company usually has 4 to 5 projects being completed at once. One of the most successful projects that they've implemented was when they moved to a cloud-based housing rehabilitation software system. And this project has reduced project completion times by 30%, and it was successful because the problem was well-defined and the options for solving the problem were fairly limited.
Sorry. So one of the process that we ask CooleyCap to share on how they measure production to reduce cost and time is the 7 waste MUDA. Producing more than is needed is not a problem for them because it is actually a benefit since there is always someone who is in need of the extra services that are produced. And to make sure that they are not using unnecessary transport, this organization set up a goal to reduce mileage by 10% each year by monitoring vehicle mileage and tracking it. They also have a internal limit of how much corporate cash can be tied up at any one time due to inventory. They measure time that occurs between application and work being done or assistance being given to make sure that there's no idle time, shortages, or downtime. Construction work is inspected by staff. The staff note the defects and require a rework by the contractor. CooleyCap does not have a system that detects unnecessary motion or using more steps than necessary to create a product. The graphical tools that are used to measure or display the data is limited, but one important graphical tool that is used in programs to monitor production performances are control charts. Mistakes and errors are not measured until they recur often enough to get the attention of the management. Then the organization will decide whether or not to launch a full process improvement team.
So for leadership engagement, currently upper management at CooleyCap has limited direct involvement in regards to supply chain management unless an issue or issues arise that are disrupting or negatively impacting production, or if there's a persistent complaint by the customers that they serve. Also, upper management reviews monthly production reports for all their programs and projects. However, with the targeted improvement teams, they provide monthly reports to the CEO and to the management teams. Upper management then organizes that information and crafts a message regarding the changes and progresses of their programs and projects, and then sends that out to the staff. However, in 2016, new federal regulations have been put in place through a program called Results-Oriented Management Administration 2, or ROMA 2. ROMA 2 is developed by the Office of Community Services, which is an office within the Department of Health and Human Services. ROMA 2 requires that all performance and financial data for all of CooleyCap's projects and programs must be presented to the corporation's 24-member board of directors, semi-annually. Because this is the first year CooleyCap has had to abide by the requirements under ROMA 2, it is too early to determine if it will have a meaningful impact on the corporation as a whole. However, the new requirements have been playing out and seen and affected CooleyCap in a couple of ways. In some cases, there's entirely new data that CooleyCap has had to capture and share with the board. This isn't too common because they have already captured a lot of data. However, more common would be that they captured one type of data in one program, but now they're required to do it in everything. So for example, they've collected customer satisfaction data in their rehab programs for years, but now they have to do that in all their programs. Another way it's impacting them is that they need to start reporting data to the board that they typically just used in-house.
Okay, and so just to wrap up real quickly, some very concise recommendations for CooleyCap to improve. One is to start using control charts for production so they can see where the processes may be out of control. By smoothing this out, they may be able to better smooth out their supply chain demands. The second is to start using balanced scorecards. Supply chain issues aren't just the only issue to monitor, and so by having a balanced scorecard, they can see across the spectrum how the agency is performing. The last is to try to use sales forecasting to create a consistent production volume. They can give advanced intelligence to their suppliers to know when demand will be high. Thank you very much for your time, and we hope you enjoyed our analysis.